Imagine you are walking through a narrow street, mud below, the smell of baking bread in the air, the bell of a church ringing somewhere far away, but suddenly a noise rises. The English have arrived. The city is in danger. This story is not of any king, nor of any hero. This is the story of an ordinary resident of Paris, who wrote in his diary everything he saw with his own eyes: hunger, war, disease, betrayal, religion, and the small everyday joys. Later, this diary got the name Journal d'un bourgeois de Paris, 1405 to 1449. And today I will take you to that same Paris, where history is understood not from books, but from the heart of an ordinary human. 1. A city that was breaking apart. The Paris of the 15th century was nothing like today. No Eiffel Tower, no big shining street. It was a city that was exhausted by the 100 Years' War, was dying from inflation, was trapped between church and politics. The man who wrote the diary was not a big scholar, maybe a shopkeeper or a small government clerk, but his observation was very sharp. He writes, "Today, bread became so expensive in the market that the poor returned only after looking at it." From this one line, we understand history is not only of swords, it is also of the stomach. 2. Armagnacs versus Burgundians. Civil war in the streets. Paris was divided into two groups: Armagnacs, supporters of the King; Burgundians, people of the Duke of Burgundy. This was not only a political fight, it was breaking friendships, relations, even neighborhoods. The diarist writes how neighbor became the enemy of neighbor. People were recognized by the color of their clothes. At night there was fear in opening the door. One day the Burgundians captured the city. He wrote, people celebrated, but the very next day they understood the new master is equally cruel. This line tells the truth of entire medieval politics. 3. Church, faith, and fear. At that time, Paris was not only a political center, but also a big city of the religious world. In the diary, we find daily processions, festivals of saints, stories of miracle, but along with that, superstition too, linking disease with sin, accusations on witches, strange punishments. The writer himself was very religious, but sometimes he also questioned the system without speaking directly. 4. The English period. Foreign rule over Paris. After 1419, Paris went under English control. Imagine, you are French, your city is ruled by the English, you pay the tax, and they give the orders. The pain is clearly visible in the pages of the diary. He writes how English soldiers showed bullying in the market. French people became strangers in their own city. Even the language of the court changed. But the biggest entry comes at the time of Joan of Arc. 5. Joan of Arc, a girl who awakened hope. The writer never saw Joan, but her story was echoing throughout Paris. The diary tells people were considering her an angel. Some people also called her a liar. The English feared her the most. When Joan was captured and burned, the writer wrote, people were silent, as if the soul of the city was burning. This is not only a sentence, the sorrow of entire France. 6. Ordinary life, the real history. The most beautiful thing about this diary is that it does not only talk about war. In it we find the condition of marriages, stories of inflation, new fashions, death of children, brightness of fairs and markets. At one place he writes, today it was so cold that the Seine river froze. Children were playing on the ice. From these small lines, the 600-year-old city becomes alive. 7. Disease, hunger, and death. Medieval life was not romantic at all. Again and again in the diary comes return of the plague, sudden deaths of people, cemeteries getting full. He writes without drama, 3 houses from my neighborhood became empty. Yesterday, I used to hear laughter there. This is real, raw history. 8. 1436, Paris became French again. Finally, the French King Charles VII took Paris back. The tone of the writer changes. Hope, some happiness, but tiredness too. He had understood. Whoever the ruler is, the life of an ordinary man is not easy. 9. The biggest strength of this diary. This book teaches us history is not only of kings. Ordinary people speak the biggest truth. There is a real voice different from propaganda. When Alexandre Touetet edited and published this diary, then for the first time the world understood that the real face of Paris was not in palaces, but in the streets. Powerful outro. Today, when we hear the name of Paris, Eiffel Tower, fashion and romance come to mind. But 600 years ago, there was hunger, there was fear, there was hope too, and there was an ordinary man who was writing all this, without knowing that one day his diary would become history. If that man had not written his story, maybe we would never have known how the medieval world actually was. So whenever you read history, remember, the most important voice is the one that belongs to ordinary people.